Hello, beautiful souls. I welcome you to another episode of About Her. I am so excited to have the wonderful Kristin Heins with me today. Kristin, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to
Mm,
get to share this together.
yeah, I feel too, because what we shared a little bit when we get to know each other just now, I feel we have a lot of things to talk to and share about, from when it comes to boundaries, when it comes to being a hot-led entrepreneur and whatever else. But before we dive into all of this, I would love to ask you to just share a little bit about you, about what you're passionate about what your life looks like, whatever feels like it's wanting to come out to share. Yeah, we'd love to hear.
Beautiful. Yeah. I guess professionally, I am a naturopathic doctor and a psychotherapist. So I spend a lot of my life in the world of health and well being, supporting other people in being more of whatever it is that they're looking to be.
Mm,
And personally, that's been a beautiful journey because it has allowed me to explore and continually evolve in my own being. I would identify as a highly sensitive person who definitely have learned over the years that and speak a lot to the idea of being highly connected, highly sensitive,
mhm.
highly engaged in the world around us without losing ourselves. And that's a hard kind of dance to do, I think, as an empath and as someone who can be easily lost to the other. So that's something I'm kind of passionate about.
Mm. Oh, wow. We have something in common in there. Thank you for phrasing that so clearly. I felt over the last years where I'm like really focusing on women with high sensitivity, as we are, that so many of us aren't even consciously aware of the fact that we're taking on stuff, energy, maybe sometimes even opinions, but definitely like feelings from other people, from communities, from our workspace. And then it's like, oh, why did I say yes to this? It's it's not even a line. But that comes so much later, because the awareness of who is actually me in that moment and where is my boundary
Mhm.
sometimes is not that tangible because of that high sensitivity. And that can lead to a lot of, I don't want to say problems, but challenges.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I always go back and I share this with patients a lot too, because it was such an aha moment. I grew up knowing I was really sensitive. I'd go home and think over and over again about what I'd said and how did someone feel about it. And that all that anxiety. And when I started as a naturopath, we had a residency year, and I'll never forget the first time I worked with someone who had an ear infection, and I'm taking their intake and I'm hearing their story. And by the end of the hour, I went to my supervisor and I was like, "Why is my ear throbbing?" And
Oh,
he was like, "Oh, because you don't have good boundaries yet." And I was like,
yeah.
"Holy shit."
Yes. It's so it's not crazy, but like with the lens of how society like classically thinks, it's like, what? That's not possible. And there's no proof of this, so you imagine it. But if you're highly sensitive, if you're highly empathic, that's your daily life. And really learning that, oh, it's not me having an issue with my ear, it's something that I've picked up. But
Yeah.
that also means you can easily let it go once you've
Mhm.
become aware of this. So I think it's actually quite empowering once you learned how to work with it.
Absolutely. I also think, it's hard because I believe, especially as women, but just as humans, when you have that degree of sensitivity and empathy, it's really easy for others to enjoy that, to validate that, right? You see people clearly, you can attend to people's needs. And so from often a really young age, that's promoted within you, right? Oh,
Mm.
you're so good at giving to me, right? And we become it becomes ingrained in our identity. Like this is my raison d'etre is to be for the other. And so if
Yeah.
we don't learn to include ourselves, it becomes
Oh,
very hard to find that balance.
it does. It does. And I think you're speaking to something that is really hard to detangle when we start working with our sensitivity is the fact that, oh, other people like really enjoy the benefits of that. This like
Yeah.
almost natural ability to make people feel seen, feel safe,
Mm,
feel like validated in how they are, feel understood, which I found like naturally leans into the people pleasing path. It
yeah.
happens automatically. So it's very much encouraged, that part of the sensitivity. And if you decide to become aware and then stop so that you find healthy boundaries for yourself,
Yeah.
normally there's quite a lot of pushback from your closest circle because that's uncomfortable for them now.
Can be, absolutely, and I think, when you were speaking about, wanting to be seen and people are enjoying, I mean, that is a human desire we have, right? We are mammals, we want to be connected, we want to be seen and felt and heard and understood, and I think I have a relational background as a therapist, so I believe that that is an important part of connection, but as the person who's really great at giving it, the kind of, for me, light switch was like, "Hey, but do I receive any of this in this dynamic?" Like, and not in a bad way, but like, am I receiving, not just giving? And so the
Mhm.
healthy relationships, the boundary work becomes, I see you and do you see me, right? I hold you, do you hold me? And when it's only one direction, either way, no matter, who two parties are there, it can become imbalanced.
Oh yes, yes. And I think it's very beautiful to like learn to not be just that giving to others. That was like a big aha moment for me. But to also like kind of flip the switch and say, like, am I that giving to myself? Am I that caring for myself? Because boundaries kind of automatically come in when
Yeah,
you value yourself, when you like kind of extracted your self-worth or remembered your self-worth so much so
yeah,
as you value others, then kind of the giving and receiving goes more into the balance state, as you said, compared to before when it's like, oh, I see the struggle that that person is in or that energy, and I want to like support them because that's just who I am. And I'll do something for them so that they feel better. But that's actually an overstepping of a boundary. I didn't like to hear that, but I think it's sometimes very necessary to lovingly say, like, well, love, that's not your job. That's just not. And I would love to know, like, what was one moment where you became aware of this and then like what was your way of shifting it, because it's a pattern obviously, so it did
mhm.
run for quite some time most of us, like stopping and saying like, oh, I became aware, now I do everything different, normally not happening. So how did you navigate that?
Yeah. I mean, as you were asking, I think for me, becoming a mother was a
Mhm.
really figural time when you spoke about that sort of like attending to self, giving to
Yeah.
self, because I had this being that I felt such incredible care, responsibility, honor to be with. And I realized, and I was a single mother, so I, was it with her and I for a long time. I kind of realized like, oh my God, if I don't take care of myself, I can't take care of her. Right. It was almost like I never really fully understood the value of self-care until I
Mhm.
realized that without it, I couldn't do this thing that was so much more important even than myself. And the beautiful gift out of that was as soon as I started to give a bit more to myself, I was like, "Oh my god, I needed this for 30 years and never did it. This is incredible." Right? And then all this, all this energy emerged and I was like, "I actually can do more, be more, live more when I'm properly self-caring and, giving to self." So that was a really cool sort of evolution of experience that happened in my world.
Wow, I love that deeply, and I think it speaks to your wisdom that you've gotten that in that moment, because I know a lot of women, me included, for the for few years of my son being here on Earth, that snapped into the other way, because it's
Mhm.
like, oh, tuning so much into what the child needs, what the family needs, feeling all of that so tangibly as if it was my own, to speak from my own perspective,
Yeah.
um, that I kind of totally forgot that my physical body has needs too. And after a
Yeah.
few years, I'm like, why am I so exhausted? And actually not being able to hold that compassion for my child anymore because, like, I've emptied my cup.
Yeah.
So for me, it took a lot longer than what you described. And I think it's very beautiful for yourself to have that realization. And children are so good at accelerating growth. So that's amazing in itself. But also for the child. So for all of you who listened who are mothers, as well
Mhm.
as being more sensitive and empathic, like really an invitation to see it from both perspectives. To say, like, my child observes me caring for myself. That's such a gift for how they navigate their life. So you're not just doing your work, that's also breaking generational patterns. That's also like really conditioning your child in an empowering way and not in a I need to endure life because that's
Yeah.
just how it is way that your child then learns and soaks up.
Absolutely, and I love that you talk about that, and by the way, it's not like I got it right all the time, but it I'm like, I don't want her to give me too much credit because there are days I was super haggard and needed more, but, it's like, yeah, remembering and really noticing, and I think the feminist in me felt a particular obligation
Mhm.
because I had a daughter and I thought, "Oh god, she's watching me and what's she gonna understand about her life in this world?" And yes, like, to sort of role model what we want for our children, even as a parent when we don't yet totally feel it, can give us access to a part of self, whether that's self-care or boundaries or honoring needs or positivity. It doesn't matter, right? It's like I can lean into this knowing someone I deeply care about is watching me, and
Yeah.
maybe I kind of feel something bubble up that I wasn't really connected to that already existed. It's as you say, the accelerator of parenthood has been very cool.
Yeah, I wasn't aware. I always wanted kids, but I wasn't aware about what what stuff would come up. And
Oh,
I think that's a particularly interesting point, especially from the lens of boundaries and um, living your life heart led, as you so beautifully shared with me. Um, is that learning that this role model, this like the way you carry yourself, how much it ripples out. It has to do with how we want our kids to thrive, how we want change in society to become reality as well. So it's not just us in our little bubbles. It's a whole lot of a big picture. And what really comes up, I feel, very tangible with kids is you see all of your patterns. You need to kind of parent yourself as well. And if you're aware and that comes up, then there's a lot of energy hitting you. Your own
mhm.
overwhelm, your own triggers from your childhood or your upbringing or whatever limiting belief like might lurk around somewhere. And then you have that kid to care for. And it's like, that's just a lot of energy to move through.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you talk about trauma and limiting beliefs. I mean, it is true that intergenerational trauma as a concept, I think you can also describe as exactly what we're speaking to is what did you grow up? What were the beliefs that were around you? Children are sponges and our little people in this world are, talk about sensitivity, right? They're full of sensors that haven't been saturated. So they're constantly taking in, growing, evolving. And there's so much power in that. And maybe some fear as a parent when you think of it that way, but it's like, yeah, they're watching, and so, what I love about my own life and my belief system is it doesn't mean you have to be perfect as a parent, but you
Mm.
do have an opportunity to speak about your struggles, right? So,
Yeah.
I'm impatient, and I know that, and in my moments of impatience, I can say, "I know I'm feeling really impatient, and I'm so sorry, and I know it makes me come across as edgy. I'm working on it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I grew up in a family where weakness wasn't spoken about. And that's one thing I know intentionally I want to do differently. I want to say I don't have to be perfect, right? Like
Yeah.
I can struggle and I can tell you I'm struggling.
Yeah. Oh, that is so beautiful and so needed. I'm deeply caring about change in our world. So for me, everything lights up when you speak about this, because this decision, I feel it's an actual decision to say like, I'm not doing it the way I was raised. Not to
Mhm.
blame
Yeah,
the people who raise you, your family, your closest. No, but to say like, no, there's another way to do it, and I'm the one who stops that pattern that maybe runs for however long in our families, and then do something different to have my kid more empowered and to speaking about perfection, something that so many people of us still have ingrained, not being able to make mistakes, not being able to share your emotions, not being able to share if you're wrong. Like, God forbid you admit that you've done something imperfectly. And I feel like for my son, he's highly sensitive too. When I share, like, I'm so sorry I snapped, I don't want to do it, but it just wasn't able to hold it. Then I see like his shoulders drop and it's like, okay. And then it's totally fine. It's just resolved itself by me admitting that I did something that I actually didn't want to do. And I feel it gives our kids so much space for making mistakes. And we talk a lot about like how cool mistakes are because that's how we learn. So
totally.
that there's no fear about that. And I feel these little things that maybe take some time out of the day where it would be so much easier to just say like, I'm never going to speak about it.
Yeah,
He's not gonna ask, so I just, put it under the rug. That would be much easier, but to actually do that and take the time and energy is how we really shift ourselves and the next generations as well.
absolutely. And as you were talking about it, I sort of had this insight of, and when we take it outside of a parent child dynamic and into our world, right? Like the impact on relationships, on boundaries, because when I can say to someone, a coworker, a partner, hey, you know what? I'm so sorry. That was shitty of me. Or I just was in a bad headspace and that wasn't about you. That's actually teaching healthy boundary work for our world because it's saying, hey, that was me, not you. That was a bad moment for me. And it cleans the space between two beings in a way that can create so much healthy opportunity, I think.
It does. And I feel especially in the realm of intimate relationship, but also in the realm of like professional working relationships, there's kind of a lot of resistance around sharing that we've done something wrong
Oh,
or that we did something that we didn't want to do. Kind of, such a vulnerable thing, but just that big vulnerability that is coming up makes me feel like it's a sign to really lean in. And the building of trust that can happen when you say to someone who you're working close with or to your partner to say like, I'm so sorry I messed up. I'm
mhm.
really sorry. Like the level of trust that opens, like you say, just cleans the space and
Yeah.
it deepens the relationship. It establishes trust. And also I feel like the very few times some of my bosses did that in corporate world back then, I was really impressed. That was really a moment. It didn't like lower the hierarchy thing. It wasn't that I was not looking up to them. I was looking up to them more after it. Unfortunately, it only
Absolutely.
rarely happened, but I like really remember it because I think that's such a cool thing. And bringing that to something that I feel we have in common, even though we haven't talked about it yet, is the way we can use our high sensitivity by getting all of that and bringing that into us being entrepreneurs. I feel people with that insights are like really great leaders, but most of us just haven't embraced that fact.
Mhm. And I think that it's probably, when you and I were first speaking about the blend of what I'm gonna call boundaried sensitivity, right? Without the good understanding of who am I, how do I understand your experience and mine as two simultaneously happening experiences that are still different experiences. Without that boundary, it's very hard to be an effective leader, right?
True.
Because you are constantly overwhelmed by the other. And when you talk about sort of using that in leadership, yes, you can be an incredible leader when you deeply understand, feel connected to, can work in a really more intimate way with others without losing yourself. Otherwise it's exhausting, right? And you probably know that, right? It's like
Definitely.
you drag in at the end of the day and just want to collapse. That's not sustainable, which is why I think you need the boundaries to be a really, what I'll call, a lifelong empath, right? To be a lifelong
Mhm.
empath, to not be hardened, to not feel overburdened. And that's kind of what mean when I talk about boundaries allow you to love with an even more open heart because you know
Mhm.
you aren't at risk.
Oh my God, that is so beautiful. I love the lifelong empath as a term. It's just, oh my God. Because what I feel it really brings very clearly is you don't have to grow thicker skin. That's something that I share about very much because that's what everyone told me always. It's like, that's just life. You need to kind of get along with that, or you need to be more,
Tough.
kind of fight more tough, more grow thicker skin, like be more of that. And I'm like, I don't want to be. That's part of my identity, that I am soft, that I am operating from the heart, and I don't want to put on a big shell to being able to succeed in business, or just go through it without being totally damaged and sick afterwards. So there needs to
Absolutely.
be a way, and there is, and it is like you said about, I feel reframing boundaries is a thing here, because most people, I don't know how it's with your clients, but people I speak with, it's always like, oh no, the boundary thing, that's too uncomfortable because then I hurt other people. It's a lot about how we frame that boundary, um, is how we execute it then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're talking about reframing boundaries and when I think about it, I really, I mean, in very basic terms, right? I always say, your boundary is the space where you end and someone else begins. And
Mm,
and when you in that very basic understanding, you can't be in a dynamic without some understanding of that because to your point, it's not you or me, it's you and I or you and me. So, when you talk about reframing, it's like, yeah, I can be deeply understanding of someone else, but I have to include myself also, right? I have
mhm.
to be also present in the understanding of what is happening or what's needed. Otherwise, we tend to give ourselves over to or feel we have to pull ourselves back in and then we totally dismiss the other. And that's what I felt when you were talking about that thick skin. It's like, do I have to just forget you to hold me? No, they can both be present.
Yeah, I very much agree with the dynamic of, like, we either retreat or we overgive as two natural reactions to that state of being. But what came through very clearly for me when you were just talking was becoming aware of the fact that if you don't hold your needs as well as what the other person needs, then it's not an actual relationship because you're not even there. It's
Mm.
like ghosting yourself. It's like you get really translucent and the other one gets really big, but maybe they don't even want that. If you're in communication or whatever depth of a relationship we're talking about, it, I think it doesn't matter that much. It's like, if you're not present, what form of relationship could that even be?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
what really helped me in regards to start embracing even like the tiniest bit when I started, that boundaries don't have to be something bad, uncomfortable, icky, is this sentence of a no to someone else is a yes to myself. And I was like, oh, I've never looked at it that way. And I feel it speaks to what we just spoke about. It's like seeing your own needs as well and seeing that you don't have to ghost yourself to make someone else happy or even be in a communication with someone.
Absolutely. And I mean, I was smiling as I was hearing you speak. It took me many unhealthy, intimate relationships to figure this out. Unfortunately, fortunately, but it gave me opportunity, right? To be like, to your point, if I don't bring myself to the table, what kind of relationship is this? Because it's really more than of just me funneling for another human. And that isn't long-term sustainable, or at least for me, it didn't feel long-term sustainable. So, yes, when we get clear that bringing ourselves into the light, let's call it, right? It
Mhm.
it gives an opportunity to say, is this other entity able to participate with who I am, with the yes to me? And if they aren't, is that really a dynamic that is what I'm looking for in this life? Or and I talk to a lot of clients who are empathic by nature, and they'll say, oh, I feel like saying no to someone is kind of like telling them they're not lovable or not being loving.
Yeah.
And my kind of felt response to that is, no, no, people can all be loving. Everyone can have deservingness for love and attendance, but doesn't always have to be from you in that moment.
Yes, I think it's like very true the way you just phrase it. It's is the awareness of us realizing about our own importance, maybe basically that we don't have to just please the other's energy or make them feel good because that's not even our jobs. But it's also about, I think, learning that maybe it's about trust as well, that you don't have to fix everything. I feel there's a lot of like wanting to to support, to help, to fix things because we see them,
Yeah.
and we see them even if they weren't spoken about, even if there wasn't a hint that someone else
Mhm.
might have picked up. We see them
Yes,
so clearly, and then it's like, oh, I see it, I can help that. But
absolutely.
it's that is overstepping a boundary. So it's actually quite the opposite thing of the intention behind it, which I think is quite funny. That we really like need to come back into our alignment
Mhm.
before we go act out on any of these impulses that might be present from conditioning to like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm overgiving here because that person needs it or because that would make me feel more safe. Another big realization
absolutely.
I feel is like, oh, I'm making the people pleasing thing a habit, and consciously, of course, because that's how my nervous system felt safe.
Absolutely. And that plays into, again, that sort of understanding of sensitivity through a different lens is, has my sensitivity also conditioned my nervous system
Hmm.
to be overly controlling of my environment, right? Which includes fixing, helping, doing, as a way of trying to reinforce a sense of safety and security for myself, as
Yeah.
opposed to letting there be a bit of chaos around me, and giving myself permission to understand, as you said, this may not be my fire to put out in this moment. This may not be my urgency. This is someone else's urgency.
Yeah, yeah, I feel that's like a really big thing to maybe mantra wise repeat to ourselves like that's not even my stuff.
Yeah.
I don't need to care for all of that. And yesterday a sentence was coming to me. I'm doing a lot of channeling, so things just drop in, and it was, the universe doesn't need you to supervise every action. And I was like, mm. It's uncomfortable but very good at the same time.
Oh,
And I've realized like how much I've done that, even though I didn't want to. It just came out of that lots of data
oh,
that just come in every second. And then you think like, oh, there's a lot happening. I can do a lot about it. So we just do. But actually it's so much more about planting the seed, about the impulse, the intention, and then the trust to say like, okay, and then let's see.
Yeah.
what the universe makes out of it. Let's see what that other person makes out of my input. I don't have to drag them along.
Yeah.
So we can really learn a lot about the boundary setting, I feel, when we lean into trust.
Absolutely. I as I had a smile kind of coming through my heart as you were speaking, because it's uncomfortable, as you say, but there is some interesting juice that comes out
Mhm.
of, the exploration of sensitivity, which is I see a lot, I have a lot of data, a lot of input, as you say, but can I also recognize that I may not be as important as I have grown to believe I am, right? Like, I mean, and I loved that in my own world. It's like, oh yeah, like I'm just a little speck of sand in this existential everlasting
Yeah.
universe, and I'm not that important. So I can contribute, I can connect, I can be a part of, but I don't have to bear all the responsibility. And for me,
Mhm.
there's like this pressure valve that opens when I let myself feel that.
Oh, I love that you're sharing about this because I feel it's so present because of everything we get in. Then we feel like there's a lot of pressure on us when it's actually not. And like learning to not interact but only observe. And I
Mhm.
feel like with all the quantum physics has proved in the last, let's say, decade about how much influence as an observer you actually like have. I think the observing got even more interesting because we don't need to take it on. And one of my human design coaches once said, like, the way I am built, and I think it's a beautiful picture for sensitivity in general, is I don't have these emotional spike. I don't have to like participate in all these emotions. For me, it's me sitting at the beach and watching the waves, watching like how other people do their stuff. I don't have to jump in and try to control every wave. I can just sit here and watch the beauty of the sea or of life in general, and I don't have to participate. And I think that's what came through when you were just talking, is to like really realize again a boundary thing.
Yeah.
Just because I get it, it's not mine to fix. And
Mhm.
that speaks to the like kind of lowering the importance of that sensitivity even, or of our own um power that we have.
Yeah.
Not to say we're powerless, but to kind of put it into perspective. It's not meaning you need to do all the things that you actually are aware of.
Yeah, I call it empath 2.0 at work, right? It's like
Ooh.
it really is, right? It's the
It
difference,
is.
as you say, between saying like, I actually have this ability to, loved your analogy, see the waves, to
Mhm,
even have a felt understanding of the waves, but I don't have to jump in and swim every time I see one. I can observe,
mhm,
I can be present. And I mean, as a therapist, that has become, I mean, it's probably essential to my survival as a human, but it's also it is the boundary function to say my role can be to be with people
mhm,
through hardships, through suffering, to see them, to make space for, but I'm not necessarily fixing or actively a member of their journey. I am holding hands with, or being present with, or even watching and observing. And that is, I mean, as you said, that's boundary. That
mhm.
is the boundary of humanity.
Yeah. Wow. I just thought while you were talking, like, my gosh, we haven't even talked about how it feels for you as someone who works so closely with people who I believe come to you in a moment of mostly struggle. Um, and holding that boundary so that you can survive yourself in a beautiful life and not take all of their stuff onto your life. So it's interesting, I think, that a lot of sensitive, empathic people lean into jobs that are really challenging that boundary aspect so much. And I was just asking myself, like, how do you how do you navigate? Like, did you find like rituals for yourself
Mhm.
or the sessions to clear? I think it's maybe a few step thing to like, oh, before the session, and then in between the session, that might be the observer boundary. But then afterwards, like, have you established some rituals and routines that help you really come back to you and let all of that client thing be theirs and then come back
Yeah.
to your own life?
I mean, I think that yes, ritual in a ritualized way. I'm still working. I'm still a work in progress. I
It's a work in progress.
it absolutely, because there is. I mean, energetically, yes, to sort of clear, to leave behind, similar to what I tell people to do at the end of a work day, and just sort of make room for themselves again. It's a beautiful theory, and yet I'm still human, and I end my day and I'm like, "Oh my god, I gotta go make dinner, and I've gotta get home to my family," and off I go with no energy attendance for sure at times. But in general, I am very visual, and whether we talk about auras or energy doesn't matter. I live professionally, so to answer kind of what do I do, I honestly live in my energetic bubble with very clear awareness when I'm with my clients, and
Mm,
I feel where I end and they begin, and I can meet them at that boundary with so much compassion and a full heart. But what is mine remains mine, and what is theirs remains
mm,
theirs, and that's, I think, how I do it.
I love that. And to pick up what you said before, I think it's like the highly sensitive entrepreneur 2.0 because you don't need to actually do a routine. It's just part of your being. It's just part of who you are. So I feel like it's about the shift that you've made from, oh, I need to do this after work or
Mhm.
before or in between, but it's who you are. And I think
Yeah,
it's really beautiful because then it becomes effortless. And that's, I feel, the point that we all want to come to is not to, oh, check off this other thing in my already really busy and full of information life, but
yeah.
it's just natural as maybe brushing teeth or making dinner afterwards, that you don't have to have it as an extra steps. It's just part.
Yeah, and I think for people who don't feel that they have, you know, explored and created that self-awareness, there are exercises, there are visualizations. You can look at it as aura work. You can look at it as just taking time, like we started our kind of beautiful conversation. Do I even connect with myself, right? Do I know who I am and where I am and what my needs are? And if I don't, it's going to be really hard to understand my space and my energetic essence. So getting curious and knowing, like, am I actually hungry? Do I need a nap? Those really basic things for some people might be the start to embodying in a more fluid way who they are and where their kind of being, I don't know, moves through earth moment to moment.
Yeah, yeah, I very much agree. And I think it also gives us permission to be a little nicer and more understanding with ourselves when we know these tools already, but then we reflect on a day and say like, oh, I didn't do it. I haven't done it. And then, a lot of times there's coming a moment of like blaming ourselves. Why didn't I do it again? Or whatever might come up that's a little bit harsh on ourselves. When
Yeah.
actually maybe you just have integrated it already and you don't need to do it consciously all the time. I'm a big advocate for our body is so wise and it actually has the ability to kind of learn to automate these things. Like my energy work, I always tell my people, if you do that a lot, your body gets to know this and then you do it without even realizing, or you don't have to do it because it's just part of you. So like kind of coming to the awareness is like maybe I don't have to do it anymore that often because it's already part of myself.
Yeah.
Gives us a little bit less of the pressure on our
Yeah.
shoulders. It's like I have to do yet that next thing again.
For sure. I mean, and I mean, I am very unproductive in the evening. That's my thing. I get up early,
Yeah.
I do lots, but I spend a lot of my evening time just letting energy come back in, right? Because
Oh,
if I'm not pouring it out, if I'm not attending to my home or my world, if I'm sitting reading or listening to music I love or doing something that just allows me to be, I kind of call it passive filling, right? When you're talking
Mm,
about like, I don't always have to be
so beautiful.
working, right? It's like
Yeah.
I can just exist and let myself recharge.
Mm,
Our bodies we're such cool miracles of
yeah.
energy. And I think that's also something I would say not isn't always conscious, but it's a habit now of when my workday is done, I don't have to keep doing, I can refill.
Mm, yes. So beautiful. And so I feel really important to talk about because a lot of us have taken, I don't want to say have taken on the energy of the hustle culture, but maybe maybe that's just the way to phrase it.
Yeah,
uh, it's very easy to stay in this constant doing mode, and I can speak for myself. It it has been such an automation to, oh, my son's asleep, I have all of these things to do, so I love my work, I just do them, I
yeah,
love it, and I actually do, until I realized I do love, and it doesn't take a lot of energy, but also I'm not recharging.
yeah,
So there's kind of the input output thing is a nice way to see it. Or like you say, charging a battery. We use our batteries and then we recharge them, and we're not blaming them for the time they need to recharge. So why are
yeah,
we blaming ourselves to say, like, oh, you didn't do something this night? You could have. Yes, I
yeah,
could. But maybe, like you say, sitting on the couch and listening to beautiful music or staring at a candle or whatever you want to do is
yeah,
the way we do recharge, so that at next day we can give from a full cup. I feel
absolutely.
it's really necessary to integrate that without the blame that often comes with it from how society operates as of now.
For sure. I mean, and these aren't also just things that came easily to me, right? I had to experience some burnout, some bad body pain and things that helped me realize, oh shit, I'm not recharging my battery and I'm not an infinite pool of energetic capacity, right? I mean, so we live on our devices now. It's like we don't, to your point, we don't judge that we have to plug our phone in at night, right? And it's like we're not giving our phones crap for not, just going endlessly. We're like, oh yeah, you need to be plugged in. Well,
Mm,
we do too. So
mm.
yeah, it's a part of what allows continued movement, growth, evolution. It's like
Oh, yeah.
even selfishly, do I want to be productive tomorrow? Okay, then I need to sleep tonight. I need some rest. They are part of the same whole. They're not binary A or B.
Yes, it's definitely not that black and white as we sometimes make ourselves believe. And I think, like, depending on what values we've identified for us to be really important, it's if you focus on the values, it's actually quite easy. Like you say, if you want to be productive tomorrow because you love your job, it's good to rest. If you
Yeah,
want to be nice to your kids and not snap at them already in the morning, then it's good to actually care for yourself and kind of fill your own cup. So it's not even just about us feeling good. It is, but also it ripples out. And I feel for people who struggle with their worth or actually feeling who they are in their own essence, that's kind of a nice bridge to come into a habit of this, to say, like, oh, I want to be there for my kids. I want to be a good present mom without being totally impatient all the time and snapping at them. So that's my permission slip for now. And then later on, it changes. But there's no shame in using some things like these so that you get to where you want.
yeah. And that is, you know, whether we look at it through neuroscience, a decision, science lens, it's true. It's, very analytical, but who do I want to be? What do I want to achieve, even if we're talking about goals and, you know, drive and output, and what makes sense for me to accomplish those things. And even if it doesn't come from the lens of, I know I deserve it yet, it might come from, oh, geez, this is essential for what I want to achieve or
Yeah.
the output I want to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's quite a big motivation driver for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
maybe at some point in the future, I'd love to see more people like really leading from that heart led space that we started off to say like, I'm doing that because I get the connectedness of everything, and I get
Yeah.
how important it is for me to tend to my heart and to act out from the heart space.
Yeah.
That would be amazing, you know, and people are already doing it, but there's room for improvement, globally speaking. And I think we'll come to that, but start the start could be a different one. We don't have to do it perfect. We can just start with like, I want to be a little less stressed in the morning, or I don't
Yeah.
want to wake up with so much pain because I've only slept 2 hours, or whatever it is. It could be something
Absolutely.
super insignificant to start with.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's about not pressuring ourselves into shifting identities and not taking on again what we see in the socials of like, I've manifested this in 10 days. All of that. It's beautiful. I really enjoy if you do, but a lot of people don't, and then put pressure on themselves for not being able to, because it's just too big of a shift. And
For
why not
sure.
start slow?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, and you talk about hustle culture, and the reality is a lot of us have
Yeah.
very busy days. So even in, in a lot of my clients' life, in my own life, it's like, no, I'm not going to have time for a 30-minute meditation at noon on a Wednesday. That's not my reality. But I might get up half an hour earlier in the morning to just exist in some quiet before my day starts. And so I thought of that when when you talk about not being able to change your whole life or to have this big shift. It's like, no, my days are going to be crazy as heck, but what if I just give myself a little permission on the front end or the back end to
Yeah.
have a bit of time with myself? It could be a small shift like that that just creates a new experience.
Totally. And I feel, especially with, maybe let's frame it as a fire horse here, or general the energy that we're in right
Yeah.
now. New Earth Ascension, whatever you want to name it, I don't care. Things are getting more intense. Things are getting more fast. Our lives don't get slower if we don't intentionally design them to. So
Yeah.
a lot of lives are as busy as you just described. Mine too. I have no idea what happens in an hour, but I know it's going to be intense. So there's no time for doing. I love the Joe Dispenza meditations that take an hour. I have no time for doing them every day in the morning, and I have no energy for it. I can force myself, but what I can also do, and that's what I'm very passionate about teaching people is I do figure eight movements while I cook my pasta. I
Yeah.
love that. It takes no extra second, but
Yeah.
it gives me a joy and a pleasure, and I do see energies as well. So for me, that's kind of a juicy one. And
I
there
love
are
that.
so many things like this. Every time we go through a doorway, you can see it as a portal. Whatever. If you go, I had once a beautiful podcast guest. She shared with me about every time she goes through the toilet, she intentionally say like, I'm flushing all of that stuff that just stresses me down with the water. It could be something like this that takes no extra effort, but is as effective and as juicy for you energy wise as doing that meditation.
Yeah.
And if you have time for both, then well, congratulations. How cool is that?
Absolutely. I love those kind of insights, and they're beautiful, and it's making me think about, being mindful, right?
Yeah.
That we can be intentional and mindful moment to moment in small ways. Mine is sighing, right? I love the
Hmm.
because it reminds me I'm okay. It's a subtle way to
Yeah.
reassure my nervous system, my mind. It's a let go. It could be a, I don't want to
Mhm.
deal with that. I'm flushing it down the toilet or I'm putting it back out into the universe. And to your point, it takes no time, how we move through a regular moment, but with mindfulness or support can totally change your vibe and feeling through the day. It's awesome.
Yes, and I feel it really um, releases a lot of the pressure of performing, of like having that new identity. And I know my podcast is called about her, so I get the irony in there, but um, it's not about the big shift, even though that's
Yeah.
cool. But you
Yeah.
need to have capacity to hold it. Your nervous system needs to kind of being able to actually let let you do
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
But we can do the small things, like you say, the sigh or shaking out after every meeting just for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I think that takes so much pressure off of us.
Yeah.
And if that integrates where we were about 20 minutes ago, so that you don't even have to think about it, but it's just a natural thing, then that's the most, I feel like that's where we come to who we actually came here to be on a soul level to the
Totally.
most
Yeah.
by doing these small things. So it's very much not about putting the pressure to do things in an ideal way, even though that would be beautiful. If it's not, the rest is ideal too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the paradox of undoing the push, right? Is sometimes the less we push and the more permission we give, the more the soul, the authentic being, however you want to label it, has permission to emerge. And I love that.
Mhm. My God, that is so beautiful. Yes, it's so true. I thank you for sharing it that way. And I feel like sometimes, a sentence like that could travel with you throughout your day and really nourishes you as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's it.
Mm.
It's a nice reminder, right? If I don't always feel pushed and I give myself permission, I may actually ironically access more of me, not less.
Yeah. I love that the universe is built that way, that the moment I feel we embrace the paradox, both sides open.
Mhm.
So it's not the black and white. It's kind of the merging of all of these.
Mhm.
Like I do less and I have time for more. Like how is that possible? It is. Maybe no explanation needed. Just the awareness of it. And I feel that's also where the pleasure lies. And with that, we come back to what you just said. That's so soothing. That's so recharging. That gives us so
Mhm.
much of these beautiful feelings of just enjoying life. And these, I feel, when we get these, there's a lot of empowerment that happens when we learn how much a small action of ours can make our day so much better. So that tends to come full circle in this. That tends to the boundary building as well, because you get like, oh, I'm that powerful even with that small thing.
Yeah,
What can I do? If I can do that, it's just opening up so much space.
absolutely. And our world is is often filled, and we often are filled with the heaviness, the hards, the challenges. But I love you talked about play and joy. I mean, because ultimately that isn't that kind of the whole thing, right? Like how do I do things that just aren't hard, and what makes me feel joy and what makes me feel flow, and how do I move and dance and play with some freedom? And when we can kind of find little access points to that in a busy life, we really get a sense of self that then
Mm.
we can use in these new and amazing ways, I think.
Yes. Yes, it is. It is really like the reason for being, actually, but kind of we forgot over all the seriousness
Okay.
that it's just a play that we do. And I think kids remind us of that very beautiful if we let them. And don't fall for the seriousness. I'm totally not saying that I've mastered this, but there are moments where it works.
Yeah, me neither. That's
Well,
that's the continual growth, and maybe that's the
it is.
journey.
That's I feel it is.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
would love to go on forever because I feel we barely scratched the surface on on what's possible. But I feel it's also a beautiful moment to kind of end this conversation with
It
that
is.
beautiful energy that we just have. So
Yeah. Thank you.
thank you for your wisdom and all of the joy that came up in this conversation
I
and
love
all of
it.
the insights.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was beautiful, and I hope that you have the most amazing day, and it was
Mm,
really lovely to start my day with this. I feel like it's gonna be a beautiful day in my world, and thank you.
For me too. Thank you so, so much.